HNV project is HNV-Link, sorry, is a thematic network. It means that beyond the experience shared during the 3 years program, it has an ambition of expanding over Europe and engaging other actors in the future. It's not only for ourselves, it's ourselves for other persons. So what are the lessons that we can get from this experience for future HNV brokers? And the question I think that some brokers will have on the ground in other learning areas is, how can I engage with other actors in HNV conservation project? And this has particular requirements, because this means changing development trends that are harmful in some ways. Otherwise, there is no point in building such a project. If everything is going right, just stay home and it will go right in the future. So it means bringing something new in the agricultural development in terms of design and practices. And there is this challenge that I think you all noticed, is bringing and making innovation relevant both for local actors and for biodiversity conservation, which is clearly the challenge of HNV-Link and HNV conservation as such. In order to illustrate this kind of challenge, we refer to the frame, which is the translation sociology frame, and which says that if you want to make other actors move, you can go through 5 steps, which is first, properly set the problematize in French, interest the other actors, enroll, engage, mobilize, and at the end, last in the long term. So what does it mean for HNV innovation process? And I think that most HNV brokers engaged in learning areas had to go through these steps. So first, there is indeed a concern with HNV conservation. There is a problem. I'm not bringing you just only a good news. Listen to me, there is a problem. And this concern is not only mine, it might be yours. Just listen to what I'm going to tell you about this biodiversity conservation. And then that you have learned about this, are you ready to do something about it? Are you ready to move? And then move. It's not only being ready, and do something for it. And at the end, are you able to last? Are you able to assess and to come back to what you have done in the future? I think that this grid is relevant for the local action. I'm sure that it's all familiar to most of you in some ways, and it can take place at different levels as well. And with regards to the debate we had this morning, I think that this can take place also at the EU level. For example, if we say the issue that we rose this morning, why does HNV does not appear in the proposal of the CAP? It is because actors doing and acting in the overall agricultural development and the policy making, they have many things in their agenda. Biodiversity conservation, in this room it's okay, but let's imagine we have another conference about competitiveness or making a big gas plant. Everyone says it's very important. So the end is to convince actors that this concern is really the main one. And that's the reason why I think that we all think as well that just putting a list of indicators and themes without saying that this is a clear priority and like kind of shopping list will probably lead to a drop of HNV and biodiversity conservation when there's all overall agenda of competitiveness and being the more competitive. So I just take the chance of this slide to come back to this because I think that we all think this is an issue for us. So let's come back to our learning areas. Of course, in this process, we have to deal with a variety of situations in our set of 10 learning areas, both regarding the agricultural and both environmental trends. And a very important thing that we needed to have clearly said is that we should not mix up the trends between what is taking place in HNV in terms of conservation and the agricultural trends. Because there is always kind of image that if agriculture is in bad situation, with regards to the usual agricultural indicators, meaning income, meaning the use of agricultural area, meaning the taking over of young farmers, that if there is problem with this kind of agricultural development, there will be necessarily problems with biodiversity conservation. And the reality is but much more complex, and you can have all different situations in HNV and biodiversity conservation, from loss to intensification to the most positive, which is regaining attributes to this, and the same with agricultural trends, from stability, meaning that we still have farmers, we still have agricultural land, and we still have production in the area, from nearly disappearing of agriculture. And this sets a space where to position the learning areas. I won't have time to describe the whole things, but the idea is just to say there is you can imagine that the situation in terms of prospect is completely different. If you are in an area where HNV conservation will be perceived as going against the business as usual agricultural trend, or if it goes along its way to support the disappearing of agriculture. So we have to be aware of that. So this was one part of the job, just to understand in which playing field are we playing. Of course, there are other dimensions to account in terms of variety. There is a socio-political context. Very briefly, you can imagine that in a national park, this is not the same as in the UK, for example. This is not the same as in Romania or in Spain, with very different socio-political settings. I will not develop. Of course, in terms of action as well, in terms of HNV-Link, the situations of our brokers or HNV area champions was quite different. Some were engaged from decades, and for example, in the Burin, that was the case. They had a long history, and in some places, they had to start nearly from scratch. So this means that's quite different in terms of dynamic that you can engage. And this linked, of course, the stage where the different brokers were quite different. Some were already existing concerns about biodiversity conservation, while others were just bringing the issue to the agenda. In order to try to make things change, what were the resources that could be mobilized in HNV-Link? The first one I was responsible of was the so-called the baseline assessment. It was understanding the situation in which such projects had to be developed. I will not develop any further, sorry. The second resource were the comparison between the business as usual versus the HNV vision that had been mentioned, for example, by James in the Burin. So just to illustrate this kind of visions, this one is from Portugal, so I think it's very inspiring, and it brings all together social community with biodiversity, with soils, etc. Another example is from Greece, where you can compare the ecological consequences and landscape dynamic between the business as usual and HNV vision. And the difference between the two, business as usual and HNV vision, clearly sets the reasons why you should engage. Why do you have to go into an HNV process? And with regards to this, it was also interesting to try to imagine what was the trend, the dynamic of the different learning areas. In black arrows, you have the trend in terms of business as usual, and the white arrows show where the vision should lead. So it's clearly we should reverse completely the trends through the project. So this is a way to concern and to say we should not expect that just waiting for things to happen will happen. You have to do something and you have to change things. So this makes a bit more complex all the very positive speeches we had this morning, sorry to tell that, but acting for HNV conservation is a kind of activism in some way. The other resources that could be mobilized in HNV-Link were the innovation assessment, and I will let the floor to Guy as the next speaker regarding this. The action plans, how can I reach the partners I need and I want to reach? So the situation is this, there are 1,000, I am alone, let's surround them. Of course, this is not feasible at first instance, but you need to find allies and a coalition to do this, and I think that most of learning area stories will tell you how you have been trying and they have been trying to find partners in this story. And the cross visits as well are a way to resource all the HNV-Link networks. So I think this is my last slide. So if we take this strategic and this brokering approach, the conclusion has been already said. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach for person engaging into a kind of project for HNV conservation. But, and of course, because of these differences of situation, because of these differences of environmental challenges, of agricultural situations, you need to act adequately to your allies and your, let's say the world, your enemies that are against this, this project. I think that it was part of the job also, firstly, to clearly understand, setting this question and saying that we are not just going in an easy journey was an important step in the project. And the idea was to help both LA coordinators to understand their context and to see what they could use as resources to make their project happen. And at the end, I think that through this diversity, of course, it has not been easy for everyone, but the idea is to give the flesh and to show that beyond this variety of situation, there are processes and there are success stories just engaging or difficulties, but there is a lot of stories for inspiration. If we take the starting point of my presentation is that the intention of HNV-Link, is to disseminate. So we hope and we think that through the flesh of all the stories, you can find inspiring examples and inspiring ways of engaging with other actors in other places. Thank you very much. This is a picture of the cover page of the Atlas, which delivers some issues about the variety of situation. Thank you very much.